Hello, everyone, and welcome to Accessible Digital Forms by Digital Accessibility by WeCo. The information found in the presentation today does include tips based on the experiences and opinions of digital accessibility by WeCo staff, but it should not be considered as legal advice. Regarding the development and implementation of digital accessibility practices, it's always advisable to seek the advice of any qualified legal counsel. The information in this presentation is the property of the Wehrman Collaborative, LLC. Please ask us before you distribute any of this information by contacting us at accessinfo@theweco.com. Thank you. As an accessibility note, this presentation does include audio descriptions for non-visual users as part of the narration. This slide shows the title of the presentation and includes WeCo's logo and the International Association of Accessibility Professionals, or IAAP, logo. The WeCo logo is also repeated on most of the slides in this presentation. Your instructors today are Sue-Ann Rodriguez, Director of Accessibility Services. Please note there might be some occasional pauses during Sue-Ann's presentation, as she does have a speech impediment and also uses a screen reader. Also assisting with today's training is myself. My name is Jen Hurst, and I'm Lead Accessibility Specialist here at WeCo. And this slide includes photos of Sue-Ann and myself. Qualified experts with a mission. First, a little bit about who we are. So WeCo is a company of digital accessibility professionals with a mission, putting you in touch with subject matter experts, or SMEs, who live with disabilities. We are members of the IAAP and provide our own rigorous training requirements for our people. This slide includes the IAAP logo and also shows a WeCo accessibility specialist using screen magnification software in an accessibility audit, with the words, "Because simulations can't replace human experience." What we do. WeCo offers manual accessibility audit services that can help your team understand which areas of your project do not meet accessibility requirements. We also provide customized recommendations on how to fix the issues. Our testing and recommendations are based on the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, also known as WCAG. WeCo also offers usability testing services, which provide keen insights into how our testers living with disabilities view your project by having them complete tasks to verify that your website or software truly works for users living with disabilities. All the WeCo testers do live with one or more disabilities that fall within at least one of the 4 primary disability groups: cognitive, mobility, hearing, and sight. Finally, WeCo offers various consulting packages and training options on topics relating both to accessibility and usability. On this slide is a photo of a hand pointing at a tablet device with people watching in the background. Webinar overview. So here's a quick summary of what we'll be talking about today. First, we're going to talk about what makes forms inaccessible and give some examples of issues we have found while auditing. Then we will cover best practices for making forms as accessible as possible. Next, we'll go over the top 3 areas that you should focus on to ensure form accessibility. And finally, we'll provide some resources you can check out for more information. We will be answering questions at the end of the presentation, but please feel free to enter any questions you might have into the chat at any time during this presentation. And this slide includes a photo of 3 people listening to a presentation. So what makes forms inaccessible? Forms consist of various types of interactive elements, such as text boxes, drop-down boxes, and radio buttons, that are designed to gather needed information from users. The information is then submitted in order to complete various actions, such as searching a website, submitting a job application, or completing a purchase. In this section, we're going to focus on various issues that make forms inaccessible to people living with disabilities. First, we're going to have a quick introduction to a term that we will be using through this presentation: programmatically determinable. On this slide, we have the following quote from the University of Minnesota. "Programmatic determinability aids accessibility. This means that a specific value can be determined in a standard machine or software readable form. Assistive technology does not have to guess about it or use heuristics. It is authoritative, precise, and provides unambiguous specificity.
Sorry, Jen, I have a question for you.
Yes.
You have a bit in the chat as well. So my question is there an app or a cabinet where you've got accessibility? So when you look on accessibility manual, is there an app for it?
I'm sorry, are you referring to for this presentation? We don't have anything like an app or anything for this presentation. We do have the live transcription, live captions going.
I mean, let me put it in the chat for me.
I'm sorry, okay, looks like Debbie answered the question. Sorry about that, everyone. Going to continue on inaccessible labels and instructions. So first issue is not programmatically determinable. So as we kind of mentioned in the quote on the previous slide, assistive technology such as screen readers needs to be able to read and convey specific information to users without having to guess at what something means. This information is considered to be programmatically determinable when it is coded so that it can be read correctly by assistive technology. Therefore, when labels and instructions do not have programmatically determinable text, assistive technology will not be able to detect the text or convey it to users. Basically, the assistive technology would act as if there's no labels or instructions at all. And related, not programmatically associated. To go along with information that is programmatically determinable, it also needs to be programmatically associated with the correct element or elements. For example, when labels and instructions are not associated with their corresponding form elements, users of assistive technology like screen readers will not be able to understand the purpose of the elements. For example, one of our clients had a login form that required a user ID and password, but the labels were coded as paragraphs. During auditing, our accessibility specialists, assistive technology, detected only the text fields, skipping right over the labels. Not visible. Labels and instructions that are hidden or are positioned off-screen using CSS will prevent sighted users from understanding the purpose of the form elements. Non-visible labels and instructions might cause confusion for users who live with cognitive disabilities, and users of speech recognition software will not be able to interact with the elements. Rely on sensory characteristics. Any labels and instructions that only use sensory characteristics like shape or color to convey information may be unclear to users who are blind, colorblind, or have low vision. Also, any labels that don't meet minimum contrast requirements or that do not include a non-color distinguishing factor such as text will not be perceivable by all users. This slide includes a photo of a woman using a laptop computer with coffee and a workbook at her side. Inaccessible interactions. Label text not in programmatic name. If the text that is visually displayed as a label is not also included in the programmatic name, speech recognition software users will not be able to interact with the element. One example would be the code included on this slide, which we found on a client's website. The programmatic name of the button is Find in this site, as set in the ARIA label. However, the visually displayed button text is Go. Hover, focus, or edit triggers change in context. So any changes in context, like automatically submitting a form, launching a new window, or moving focus to another component, it must not happen when a user hovers over a form element, places focus on a form element, or changes the value of a form element, unless the user is notified in advance that the change will take place. Action should not take place on any element unless the user clicks on it or presses the Enter or Spacebar keys while focus is on the element. Some more inaccessible interactions. Placeholder text being used as a label. When using placeholder attributes in place of visible labels, users with cognitive disabilities might find it difficult to recall what type of data they're supposed to enter once the placeholder text disappears. For example, this slide includes screenshots of a client's newsletter subscription form that use placeholder text as form element labels. In the second screenshot, the placeholder text has disappeared as soon as any text is entered, meaning some users might not remember what information they're supposed to enter in those fields. Input purpose not programmatically determinable. So any form elements that request personal user data such as name, address, birthday, etc., that do not include the HTML autocomplete attribute, or if they use incorrect autocomplete attribute values, they can cause stress for users living with cognitive or mobility disabilities. Use valid autocomplete attributes listed under Section 7 of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1. This will allow assistive technology and browsers to provide specific autofill information to users, letting them know the text field's purpose. Inaccessible form validation. Errors or confirmation of success not visible. Like the labels and instructions, any form errors or confirmations of success that are hidden, or if they're positioned off-screen using CSS, it'll prevent sighted users from knowing whether their form submission failed or succeeded. This may cause confusion for users who live with cognitive disabilities and would prevent them from correcting any form errors. Errors not programmatically determinable. When the error messages do not have programmatically determinable text, assistive technology won't be able to detect the text or convey it to users. This would also prevent users from being able to determine how many errors there were in their form submission or what the errors were. Errors not programmatically associated. Again, when error messages aren't associated with their corresponding elements, users of assistive technology will not be able to determine which form element values need to be corrected. For example, a client's form where the error message was placed visually at the top of a form, but was not associated with any of the form elements and simply stated invalid input. Our accessibility specialists had no way of knowing which element the message was referring to. And finally, error message doesn't specify the field is required. For any form element that isn't identified as being required both visually and programmatically in its default state, any error messages must specify that that field is required. Next slide.
What makes forms accessible? In the previous section, we discussed many issues that will make forms inaccessible. Ensuring that those issues are not present in your form will get you a long way to becoming accessible. In this section, we will cover additional items that will get your forms even closer to being fully accessible to all users. Next slide. Accessible labels and instructions. Labels and labels and instructions close to elements. Labels and instructions should be adjacent to their corresponding elements, both visually and in the DOM, D-O-M, all in caps. This will ensure that users who magnify their screens and that screen reader users will be able to easily make the connection between the labels, instructions, and the related form elements. Non-critical instructions may be hidden. If a form element includes instructions that are helpful but not essential to completing the form correctly, those instructions can be hidden until the user wishes to view them. This will help users with cognitive disabilities who might find the instructions useful, but could be overwhelmed by too much information being displayed by default. Required fields identified properly. Any form elements that are required to be completed to successfully complete a form should be identified as such, both visually, is often done by using the asterisk symbol, and programmatically. Doing so will ensure that users will be aware that those fields are required, instead of having to return to fill in the field or fields after an unsuccessful form submission. A screenshot of a digital form with visible labels placed adjacent to their corresponding form elements is displayed on the slide. Next slide. Accessible custom form elements. Use native HTML form elements. The first thing that you can do to ensure form accessibility is to refrain from using custom form elements, if at all possible. Instead, use the existing native HTML form elements, such as buttons, text fields, checkboxes, etc., where you can. The functionality that is available by default in the native HTML elements, for example, functionality for non-sighted users and users who rely on keyboards, must be added manually to custom elements, and therefore, or resulting in them being forgotten. Custom form elements match native HTML form elements. If you do have a need to use a custom form element, ensure that it is as close as possible to the native HTML form elements by ensuring the following: that the correct role is used based on the intended behavior and the purpose of the element itself, that all ARIA attributes are used according to their specification, as ARIA that is used incorrectly can worsen or prevent accessibility from being implemented correctly, and that the visual design matches the custom element. For example, ensure that buttons visually appear like buttons, etc. Updates and changes through ARIA Live. For any updates or state changes that cannot be communicated by using HTML code or ARIA methods, ARIA Live messages should be used. Including ARIA Live messages such as results filtered by category or tables sorted by price descending will make screen reader users aware of the changes that took place. A photo of developers working together at a table is included on this slide. Next slide. Top 3 considerations for accessible digital forms. In this final section, we will be going over the top 3 areas that you should to focus on to ensure that your digital forms are accessible to all users. Next slide. Keyboard accessibility. Many users are not able to use a mouse and instead rely on keyboards for navigating and interacting with websites and software. They use the tab key to move forward through elements on a page, the shift plus tab keys to move backwards through a page, and the arrow keys to move through certain types of elements on the page. Since they are not able to use a mouse to point and click on interactive elements, they need to be able to encounter elements and activate them by only using a keyboard. With this in mind, the following items need to be checked to ensure accessibility for keyboard users. All elements are accessible via keyboard. The ability to place focus on interactive form elements via a keyboard is critical for screen reader users, as they depend on keyboards to navigate, interact with elements, as well as, again, sighted users who rely on keyboards to interact and navigate digital content. If these users are unable to use the tab key, the shift tab key, and arrow keys to gain access and interact with the form elements, again, they will not be able to complete any part of a form. Visible focus indicators. Visible focus indicators are used to visually indicate which elements currently have focus. The indicators may be outlines around an element, change in text or background color, etc. If form elements do not have a clear visual indicator displayed when they have focus, visual keyboard users will not know what element that they are on. For example, for a form that we audited that included an add to cart button with no visual outline around it, a WeCo accessibility specialist with vision was not able to determine if or when that button received focus while navigating with their keyboard. Focus in logical sequence. When the focus does not move from element to element in a logical order when navigating with a keyboard, specifically the tab key, users are unable to understand their position / location when they're navigating. In the example code shown on the slide, taken from WCG failure example number 1, a tabular layout of products and locations is read out of order by screen readers and other assistive technology because CSS was used to position the items so that they appear to be in a table. So screen reader users will hear products, locations, telephones, computers, portable MP3 players, Wisconsin, Idaho, when they are navigating through the content. Next slide. Making it easy to get it right. Enough time to complete. Provide the users with the ability to turn off, adjust, or extend the time limit if web functions are time dependent. For example, completing a purchase within a specific time frame, as it will be difficult for some users to perform the required action before the time limit occurs. The ability to reverse and confirm changes. For forms with a legally binding transaction for a users such as a payment transaction, test submission, etc., provide a means for the user to change, confirm, or reverse their entry before the final submission. Accessible CAPTCHA. CAPTCHAs are a common method that websites use to confirm that the content is being accessed by a human rather than a computer. However, if a CAPTCHA is used, be sure to provide an alternative accessible CAPTCHA. In the example on this slide, we show a screenshot from WeCo's website. In which there are 3 boxes that the user can check to receive various notifications. Then the final box reads, check this box to verify that you are human. This checkbox is an accessible alternative to CAPTCHA because it doesn't rely on viewing an image or interpreting distorted letters or numbers. Next slide. Self-testing. The final thing that you can do to ensure form accessibility is testing. Here are some questions that you can use to guide you while making sure that your form is accessible. Do all forms include a visible label that is placed close to the corresponding field? Confirm that placeholder text is not used as a label. Are you able to access and interact with all interactive elements such as expanding, collapsing menus, clicking on buttons, etc., using only your keyboard? Ensure that none of the form elements are skipped. When navigating through the form with your keyboard, did all interactive elements have a visible focus indicator when they received focus? Were all of the interactive form elements encountered in a logical sequence when navigating via your keyboard? If you fill out the form correctly and submit it, do you receive a visual confirmation of successful submission? If you fill out the form incorrectly and submit it, do you receive visual error messages that make it clear which form and elements had errors and what those errors were? Note, WeCo's new e-learning platform, WeCollege, will be offering a course called Self-Testing for Accessibility when it opens officially on January 3rd. We will give you more details about the WeCollege in just a moment. Next slide. At this time, we would like to open things up for questions and discussion. Does anybody have anything that they would like to ask about accessible forms?
Sue Ann, this is Debbie. We just had a question come in from Caroline that says, I'm wondering about your take on the accessibility of Google Forms and if there are ways we can improve them if we use that platform.
We don't have too much experience with the using the platform with regards to Google Forms. So I would say, if there is an ability to test those forms, and if they happen to be inaccessible in any of these items that we talked about in this webinar, that they could see if they could try to, I don't know if there's an ability on that platform to change code at all, but if there is, I would suggest trying to do that. Jen, anything that you want to say or add?
No, unfortunately, I would say the same. We do not really have any experience using Google Forms.
Caroline also asked if there are also Also, are there any other automatic forms like Doodle, SurveyMonkey, MailChimp on set platforms that are preferable? This is Debbie again. I can tell you that at WeCo, we have some forms that we use internally, and they all are so different. The one that we use is accessible, but it has some limitations, including setting up the forms on the back end isn't as accessible as we would like it to be. So it's a hard one. I don't think there's anything perfect out there. Jen Swin, anything else?
No,
agree.
I would agree with you too, Abby, as well. Any other questions?
Lone has just submitted a question. It says, have you done any other forms of testing beyond the self-test you described? Do you ever learn conflicting information?
So we have a product that we have here that we offer here at WeCo that does accessibility testing based on the WCAG 2.1 success criterion level A and level AA. So it includes more than what you see here as far as verifying things. And so there are times when we're not quite sure if something is an accessibility issue just based on the success criterion. Sometimes it's not clear cut. But we talk about it amongst the access team and we make a determination within the group at that point in time. Jen, anything that you want to say or add about that?
No, I was just going to mention also that some of our access team members do use screen readers, which
yes.
also exposes some form errors to them, as it's much more obvious if something's out of order or missing a label or not coded properly, things like that. And then sometimes we might actually check the code a little bit to see if we can, recommend a good fix on how to fix those accessibility issues.
Right, that's a really good point, Jen.
So I see we had another question come in. What is the accessibility standpoint on having actions within the form fields? For instance, having an eye icon to visualize the password. Is this pattern accessible? If you are using anything like an icon to indicate information, you would want to make sure that you have the correct alternative text on that icon so that users of assistive technology will know that that's what that means, especially if it's interactive, like have it coded to say something like click to view password or click to make password visible, something like that.
Any other questions or comments at all?
There are no other questions in the chat at this time.
All right, well, since we don't have anything else, I have to thank everybody for
Sue-Ann,
joining
I got
us.
a few more slides to go through, sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot about that. Okay, sorry. Okay, Jen.
Okay. So as we're wrapping things up here, we're going to give you some accessibility resources that you can take with you. As we mentioned, WeCollege on-demand learning. We're pleased to announce that expanded versions of our webinar classes like this one will soon be available in our new WeCollege accessible e-learning portal. The WeCollege will be coming, as mentioned, on January 3rd, but we are pre-selling discounted passes right now through November 18th. If you're interested, you can contact our WeCo Client Relations Department at accessinfo@theweco.com to learn more. And this slide shows a woman seated on a couch wearing a headset while typing on a laptop. You can also use our free resources by visiting us on the web at theweco.com. Our website includes things like a free accessibility library, an events page, which includes information on all of our upcoming webinars, workshops, meetups, and events. We also have blog posts on a variety of accessibility and usability topics and more. You can also reach out directly to the WeCo accessibility team through email. Again, accessinfo@theweco.com, or you can give us a call at any time, 855-849-5050, extension 1. You can also sign up for our accessibility blog and email quick tips. A few times each month, you'll be notified of our latest blog entries related to accessibility and how people living with disabilities interact with IT. Our blog entries cover everything from the accessibility experiences of our testers who live with disabilities to the latest legislative updates. Our quick tips emails provide you with technical accessibility tips in a short email message, complete with an informative video short, in order to demonstrate easy ways to keep your websites and software accessible. And these tools do make it easy for you to keep accessibility top of your mind and to remember to implement what you learned today. This slide includes an email icon. So please feel free to reach out to WeCo Client Relations team if you have any questions at any time. Again, access info@theweco.com or call 855-849-5050, extension 1. And thank you so much for joining us today. We've enjoyed sharing this time with you.